Hello again. It is Wednesday, and that means it is another weekend reading. Why is it called weekend reading if this takes place on a Wednesday? Because I'm telling you about what I read last weekend and what I'm reading this weekend. It has to do more with the reading itself. That's the part to focus on. Wednesday's just comic book day, so I figured it'd be a good day for it. I could technically do it any day I want. I'm going to get off track here, but screw it. As I said, weekend reading, for anyone who doesn't know, is when I talk about what I read last week in terms of trade paperbacks, what I'm going to be reading this week, and I also pose a little question about comic books in general. Something that I just thought up at the top of my head. Whether it's a good question or not, I don't know. It's up to you, I guess. So let's start with what we read last week. Last week, we had Iron Fist, Heart of the Dragon, which is a little trade paperback by Larry Hama, Dave Watcher, or Dave Wachter, and Niraj Menon. Decent read. It seems to be falling in a series of Iron Fist miniseries that have come out over the past couple of years. Like I said, it was a good read. It was a weird read because it seemed to bring an end to the Iron Fist story by making Danny Rand not the Iron Fist anymore and basically starting the whole mythos over. I don't know if that means they have other plans for Iron Fist, or maybe that'll just be ignored and the next time we see Danny Rand, he'll still be the Iron Fist. I don't know. We'll wait and see. It's one of those things that could really go either way. And then there was Maestro, War and Pax by Peter David, Javier Pina, Jermaine Peralta, Wilton Santos, Oren Jr., and Jesus Ebertov. This was my favorite one of the week. This one was it was an interesting read. It was basically a play off of, I don't know, I think it was supposed to take place before the famous Future Imperfect Hulk storyline, which introduced the Maestro, introduced a future version of the Maestro is a future version of the Hulk who's evil, and then the Hulk has to confront him and fight him. It's a whole time travel thing, but it was written when Peter David, back in the 90s when Peter David was writing the Hulk. It's a pretty good read, this one. It basically sets up how the Hulk goes about. The Hulk has a community called Dystopia, which is trying to expand to conquer the Earth. He's going around conquering other groups. There's an reintroduction of the Pantheon, which was a group it was introduced during Peter David's Hulk run that included this group of demigod descendant superhumans who worked with the Hulk for some time. They all had weird godlike powers. They're still alive. They're also nearly immortal, so they're still alive in this future as well. And they're hiding out, and they get recruited into a scheme by Doctor Doom to try to capture the Hulk and maybe even either subdue him or kill him. It doesn't work. They end up dying. And it turns out it was all a plot by Doctor Doom to take over Dystopia. But, of course, the Hulk gets away. And it turns out that he and Doom set up the plan themselves to take out the Pantheon. And then the Hulk double-crosses Doom, but Doom saw it coming. They fight. It looks like Doom might actually have the upper hand for a minute until the Hulk tricks him and then beats him pretty badly, but Doom manages to get away, and then it basically just ends with, the Hulk going back to ruling Dystopia with some of his potential enemies taken out. But it's set up that there might be another miniseries eventually because you see out of the wreck, at one point the Hulk he had the Pantheon destroy AIM's base, because I guess he had been kept there at one point. But you see out of the wreckage of the AIM base, the Abomination pops out, which is odd because the Abomination is currently dead in the Hulk comic books, but that's really irrelevant. And then there was also a backup story, for some reason, of the fucking Pantheon fighting some group called the Black Scythes. It's I don't know what the point of that one was. I guess they killed one of their members or something, but it's neither here nor there. That doesn't sound like it was a very enthusiastic retelling of the story, but at best it was okay. Neither one of the reads this week was that great, so I just had to choose which I thought was okay. And that one was the one that was okay to me. So, yeah, that was last week. What do we got going on this week? Well, first up, we got another Image series, and it looks like, once again, another Image series that's coming to a close with its last volume. We have Birthright, Volume 10, Epilogue. That's the title, Epilogue. Which I believe the story was mostly done, so it looks like this is just bringing everything to a close. Let's see. When he was a child, Mikey Rhodes disappeared. That's basically the beginning of the plot. Lost in the land of Tyrannos, he grew into a warrior of legend and waged war against the God King Lor, a battle that even crossed over onto Earth. Now the war is over and Mikey is victorious, but no victory is without sacrifice. Since 2014, Joshua Williamson and Andre Brezin's fantasy epic Birthright, it's been that long? It's been 7 years? Holy shit. Has enthralled readers. And now it's time for the Rhodes family to embark on one last thrilling adventure. Collects Birthright 46 through 50. It's really been 7 years? It doesn't feel like it's been that long. Jesus. Time passes quick. But yeah, this should be an interesting read, I think. It's been a good read overall, for sure. Good story, good art. Then, of course, once again, it's just another 2 reads this week. It's going to stay that way for a while. The pickings are getting very, very slim, which is probably a good thing with my new fucking job that does not pay very fucking well. So it might actually get down to 1 a week, which means you know which one's going to be the favorite. Or we might get down to none a week, in which case I might not even make these. Or I might turn them into something else. I don't know. I haven't really thought it out. I got to think a lot of things out, but that's a whole other video. Let's see. The next read is The Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 13, King's Ransom. The return of one of the most dangerous artifacts in the Marvel Universe. The Lifeline tablet has plagued Spider-Man's life more than once. Mayor Wilson Fisk wants its secrets, and he'll happily kill Boomerang to get his hands on the stone. But he doesn't know Spidey is Boomerang's roommate. That's a recent development. The wall crawler must pull out all the stops to prevent the Kingpin from wielding nigh ultimate power, including assembling his street-level allies and donning an all-new costume. That's always a big thing, at least for a minute. Plus, what fates array star-crossed lovers Randy Robertson and the Beetle? Find out as the years-old enmity between their fathers, Robbie Robertson and Tombstone, boils over once more. An all-out war erupts as the super crime lords of the Marvel Universe compete at the whims of the Kingpin. Collects Amazing Spider-Man 61 through 65 and Giant-Size Spider-Man King's Ransom by Nick Spencer, Patrick Gleason, Federico Vicentini, Mark Bagley, Roge Antonio. I don't know how you spell that. Is it Roge? I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Andrew Hennessy, Edgar Delgado, and Alex Sinclair. That sounds like it should be a good read. Spider-Man's been pretty good lately. So that was the reads. What's the question of the week? Okay. The question of the week is it's another one of about comic books in general, and it's a simple one, sort of. It's whose character development has been most criminally ignored? Now you're wondering, what the hell does that mean? Well, a lot of comic books are serialized, and a lot of characters run throughout many years, and they're handled by more than one creator, more than one writer. And a writer who might have progressed a character might start out one way, But like in all stories, characters progress and they have character development. Hell, you have that in real life. You know, most people don't end up the same as the way they started. Life changes them. The story of their life, whatever it may be, may change them. And if they don't, well, they're probably living a pretty sad life. So the question is, what character has been handed from one writer to another, and that which could happen in numerous different ways, and just had whatever character development they've ever had just thrown out the fucking window? Like, sometimes a writer will take over a book and just completely ignore what the writer before did. Now, good writers don't do that, but there are a lot of shitty writers that are like, well, I like the character when they were like this. It's like, okay, well, that was years ago, and people have been reading the character since then, and different things have happened, and you're going to revert them back to what they were 5 years. Everyone who's been reading for, like, say, the past 5 years is going to be pissed because you've completely ignored everything that's happened. Now, I guess technically you can do that, but it's kind of a shitty thing to do. It's shitty to the previous writers. It's shitty to the fans. I mean, there's numerous examples of this. This is mostly something that happens with, like, team books, because it's harder to track character development in a team book. But, you know, there is character development in team books, but the problem is you can have one writer take over from another and they reboot the whole book instead of carrying things. Reboots have become so big in recent years that when a new creative team takes over, it's intentionally not the same book it used to be. And it's pitched as a whole new thing. I mean, you could argue in the most recent version of the X-Men, almost all of the character development, almost everything that's happened before has been thrown out the fucking window. Characters are completely different from who they used to be. But that's intentional. Because basically, definitely from where the X-Men had been before, but the X-Men had been written into such a fucking corner from where they were before, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, you had a lot of characters who just straight up were dead. And it's just like, well, what are we supposed to do now? I mean, before they rebooted the X-Men here, I mean, like, so many characters were dead. Fucking Cyclops was missing a fucking eye. I mean, shit was crazy. They were doing the best they can with what they had at that time, but the X-Men definitely needed a change. And sometimes, you know, a book really definitely needs a kick in the ass like that. It needs a complete start over. But not every time. So I'm thinking more about, like, single issues. But the problem is, there's characters who have their own comic books who are then also part of teams. And if you pass that, and let's say you have character development in their solo comic book, but then in the team book, it's completely ignored. Now you might be thinking, are you thinking of someone specifically, Matt? I am. A couple of years back, there are currently two Superboys in DC comic books. There's Clark Kent and Lois Lane's son, Jonathan Kent. Although I think he's technically going to be taking over as Superman for a while. It's weird. But last I checked, he was Superboy. But there's also another Superboy. A Superboy that predates him, who goes back to the 90s. His name eventually became Connor Kent, as it was given to him by Clark Kent. He's a hybrid clone of Superman and Lex Luthor. But he mostly has Superman. He has Superman powers plus some kind of weird telekinetic abilities as well. But he was Superboy for a while, and he started as like a cocky, arrogant teenage version of Superman, but nothing like Clark Kent was. Now, for years, his character developed, his powers changed, his origin changed, his character changed. He even became a member of a new version of the Teen Titans. He became friends with Robin. He started dating Wonder Girl. And then at one point, he died. He was killed by Superboy from another reality who is kind of evil. You could argue that his character development got completely fucked with, but that's a whole other thing. But the point is, he died. Then, of course, as with many famous characters, he died, came back. That's not the character. Then when he came back, he had his own book for a little bit. He reconnected with his friends, with Wonder Girl. But then they rebooted the Teen Titans story comic book with him in it. Him and Wonder Girl in it. And then all their character development got thrown out. She broke up with him in Teen Titans. He was treated like just the same arrogant ass he used to be, even though that wasn't what he was anymore. It was like the writer of the Teen Titans at the time completely just fucked over his character. They fucked over all the characters in that book. That book sucked dick. But he was one of those characters that got so blatantly fucked over. There's also another time in Marvel Comics, like Baron Zemo. At one point, there was a point where Baron Zemo seemed like he was almost going to become a good guy, or maybe like at least an anti-hero character. And then he was just reverted completely back to villain for convenience of a storyline, because someone needed him to be that. Now, of course, their characters are fictional, they're completely written, that's what they can be, but it seems kind of fucked up. So, those are just two examples I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more. And that's the point I asked that question. Who, in your opinion, has had their character development most criminally fucking overlooked? That in some reboot or some takeover by another writer, they just completely ignored what came before, despite you or, you would hope other fans also liking it, and just decided, no, I'm going to revert the character back to this because I like them better as this. So yeah, that's the question of the week. And that's it for this week's weekend reading. So enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your reading. Have a good one, and I will see you next Wednesday.